Marc-Vivien Foé. He was a talented Cameroonian midfielder playing at the highest levels of international soccer. On June 26, 2003, he was playing for his country in a Confederations Cup semi-final against Colombia in Lyon, France. In the 72nd minute of the game, with no other players around him, Foé suddenly collapsed in the center circle. He had an undiagnosed heart condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. This caused his heart to just stop. Medical staff rushed onto the field to help. They spent crucial minutes trying to revive him with oxygen and chest compressions before carrying him off on a stretcher. But there was a massive problem. They did not have an automated external defibrillator, or AED, right there on the sidelines. By the time they finally got him to the stadium's medical center and attempted to shock his heart, it was too late. He passed away shortly after. His tragic death sent shockwaves through the sports world. It forced major soccer organizations to completely change their medical protocols, making sure that life-saving AEDs and trained emergency doctors are always waiting right on the sidelines. Miklos Feher. He was a Hungarian striker playing for the Portuguese soccer club Benfica. On January 25, 2004, Benfica was playing Vitória de Guimarães in a match broadcast live on television. Near the end of the game, Feher received a yellow card from the referee. He pushed his hair back, gave a slight smile, and then suddenly leaned forward in obvious distress. Seconds later, he collapsed backward onto the grass. Medics rushed the field and tried to revive him, but he later died at the hospital. The cause of his sudden death was hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. This is a condition where the heart muscle becomes abnormally thick, making it hard to pump blood during intense physical exertion. Back then, standard athletic physicals usually just checked basic heart rate and blood pressure, completely missing underlying genetic conditions like this. Feher's tragic collapse on live television pushed the sporting world to wake up and mandate rigorous cardiac screenings, like routine echocardiograms, to stop healthy-looking athletes from dropping dead. Sarginho. He was a veteran Brazilian defender playing for the club São Caetano. On October 27, 2004, his team was playing a regular league match against São Paulo at the Morumbi Stadium. About an hour into the game, Sarginho simply collapsed on the grass. Medical teams rushed onto the field and tried to revive him right there in front of the crowd. He was carried off and rushed to a nearby hospital, but he died less than an hour later from sudden cardiac arrest. What makes this story so grim is what came out during the investigation. Sarginho had an enlarged heart, and the club's medical staff actually knew about it. They ran routine tests earlier in the year and found the severe condition, but they cleared him to keep playing anyway. As a result, the club was heavily penalized and docked 24 points in the league, while the team doctor faced strict suspensions. His death still matters today because it shows exactly what happens when people ignore a clear medical warning just to keep a player on the pitch. Antonio Puerta. He was a 22-year-old rising star for Sevilla. It was August 2007 during a Spanish league match against Getafe. Puerta suddenly collapsed near his own goal. He had a hidden heart condition called arrhythmogenic right ventricular dysplasia. This meant the muscle tissue in his heart's right ventricle was slowly being replaced by fat and scar tissue, which scrambles the heart's electrical signals. Teammates rushed over to help, and medics quickly arrived. Puerta regained consciousness and was actually able to stand up. Here is where a critical medical error happened. Instead of being put on a stretcher and immediately monitored, he was allowed to walk all the way off the pitch under his own power. Once he reached the dressing room, that extra physical strain triggered multiple fatal secondary cardiac arrests. He was rushed to the hospital but passed away 3 days later. Today, his death stands as a strict, permanent lesson for sports medical teams everywhere. If a player collapses from a suspected heart issue, they never walk off the field. Phil O'Donnell. Phil O'Donnell was the captain of the Scottish football team Motherwell. On December 29, 2007, his heart suddenly gave out during a match against Dundee United. The medical cause for what happened to him is left ventricular failure. As he was about to be substituted, he collapsed right on the pitch. Medical staff rushed out and spent about 5 minutes treating him on the grass before moving him to a waiting ambulance. This is where the intense scrutiny comes in. People quickly started questioning the timeline. Fans and officials wanted to know exactly how long it took to get him from the stadium to Wishaw General Hospital. The paramedics had to stabilize him before they could safely drive, which ate up precious time. The visible effect of this tragedy was a massive public debate over pitchside medical logistics. Everyone wondered if a faster hospital transfer could have changed the outcome. His passing still matters because it forced sports leagues everywhere to tighten their emergency response routines and improve stadium transport plans. Pier Mario Morosini. Pier Mario Morosini was a 25-year-old midfielder playing for Livorno in Italy. On April 14, 2012, during an away game at Pescara, he collapsed on the field in the 31st minute. He tried to stand back up, but he stumbled and fell again as his heart stopped beating. Medical staff rushed onto the grass to start CPR. They needed an ambulance immediately, but when the ambulance arrived at the stadium gates, it could not get through. A local city police car was parked right in the emergency entrance. Players and officials panicked. They waved frantically and tried to break the car window to move the empty police vehicle. Precious minutes ticked by while they struggled to clear the path. By the time the ambulance finally reached the pitch, loaded Morosini in, and drove him to the local hospital, it was too late. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. His sudden loss forced Italian football to confront an appalling safety failure, leading to strict new rules that ensure stadium emergency routes are never blocked again. Patrick Ekeng. Patrick Ekeng was a Cameroonian midfielder playing for the Romanian football club Dinamo Bucharest. On May 6, 2016, during a match against Viitorul Constanta, he collapsed near the center circle just 7 minutes after coming on as a substitute. The cause was sudden cardiac arrest. What happened next was a catastrophic failure of basic medical care. People noticed immediately, but the response was terribly slow. The ambulance took almost 3 minutes to drive onto the pitch. When it finally arrived, the medical staff did not perform immediate CPR on the field. Even worse, the ambulance was basically just a transport vehicle. It lacked a working defibrillator and essential resuscitation equipment. Ekeng was loaded into the back and rushed to a hospital right next to the stadium. Because his brain and heart went without oxygen for so long during those crucial first minutes, he could not be saved. He was pronounced dead shortly after. His preventable death exposed extreme negligence in sports medicine, leading to criminal convictions for the match doctor and forcing football leagues everywhere to mandate proper emergency equipment. Undetected cardiomyopathy. Sometimes the heart muscle itself grows abnormally thick or enlarged, a condition known as cardiomyopathy. The most common type in young people is hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which affects roughly 1 in 500 individuals. As the heart walls thicken over time, the chamber inside actually shrinks. The heart has to work much harder just to pump normal amounts of blood. When a seemingly healthy athlete pushes their body to the limit on a field or court, this strained heart muscle can suddenly short-circuit. The electrical signals misfire, causing the heart to violently quiver instead of pump. The visible result is that the athlete suddenly collapses in the middle of a game, struck down by sudden cardiac arrest despite being in peak physical shape. This remains a serious issue today because traditional sports physicals routinely fail to catch it. A standard checkup usually just relies on a doctor listening with a stethoscope. Without requiring advanced screenings like an EKG, these silent and fatal abnormalities stay hidden until it is too late. The defibrillator shortage. For decades, professional football stadiums lacked the proper medical gear and trained teams to handle sudden cardiac arrest. Back in the mid-20th century, team doctors mostly carried basic first aid kits onto the field. They could tape ankles or treat cuts, but they were not prepared to restart a heart. Medical experts eventually realized that during cardiac arrest, the brain and vital organs are immediately starved of oxygen. They discovered a critical window for treatment. If a patient receives an electric shock from an automated external defibrillator within the first 3 minutes of collapsing, their chance of survival sits at around 70%. After that 3-minute mark, the odds drop by 10% with every passing minute. Because early stadiums did not mandate AEDs or station rapid resuscitation teams on the sidelines, a collapsed player faced a slow, chaotic response. Medical staff often had to wait for an ambulance to navigate through massive crowds just to bring a defibrillator. Recognizing this deadly delay forced leagues to require AEDs at every game, a standard that continues to save athletes today. Emergency protocol reforms. This is the complete overhaul of medical rules in professional soccer. After the tragic collapse of players like Marc-Vivien Foé in 2003, soccer officials realized they had a massive blind spot. FIFA and regional leagues stepped in and forced teams to change how they handle player health. They introduced the mandatory pre-competition medical assessment in 2006. Now, before a player even touches the grass for a tournament, doctors must run strict cardiac screenings like ECGs to look for hidden heart defects. You can actually see the physical difference during a match today. If you look at the sidelines, every single sanctioned game must have a fully equipped medical team waiting. They are required to keep an automated external defibrillator, or AED, sitting right next to the pitch, ready to go in seconds. This strict setup still matters because it is the reason why a sudden collapse today is no longer an automatic death sentence, giving athletes a real fighting chance to survive.